Donald Trump is the biggest freak in the world, and subsequently, he is a freak magnet. And one of the biggest freaks surrounding him, of course, is smoky eye sociopath J.D. Vance. And this guy has some nerve. So the Pope, we all know the former one, Francis. J.D. Vance goes to visit him, drops dead. And then it comes out that all of these bishops and all of these popes have written all of these tweets about what a bad Catholic and what a bad humanitarian and what a bad person J.D. Vance is, including the current Pope, Leo. J.D. Vance cannot read the room. He has to race over there to go meet Pope Leo, who can't stand him, doesn't like what he stands for, knows he's an autocrat, knows he is a supporter of autocracies, knows he's an egregious human rights violator. Here comes J.D. Vance to shake Pope Leo's hand, and watch Pope Leo's body language. Play this footage. So here J.D. Vance goes in. And look, the Pope. So in other videos, you see the Pope like sing Zelensky and people like that, and he's just so excited to see them. This is about as icy as it gets. And J.D. Vance and Usha are just so breathtakingly unaware that this man has a digital footprint describing how disgusting J.D. Vance is.
Well, I think that he posted 5 total times in 24 and 25, and 2 of them were about Pope Francis's health. The other 2 were about how horrible J.D. Vance was, and then one about the immigration policy. So, I mean, this guy, he's been Catholic for 5 minutes, I think. He races over there. Like you said, he cannot read a room. The lack of self-awareness is unbelievable.
So I just always am wondering how Fox covers this stuff. Put this up. Vice President Vance and Second Lady steal the show at American Pope's inaugural mass, which is total propaganda. The international news branded him as a hypocrite, a man that can't read the room, and everything that we just said previously. But let's go ahead now and review one of these tweets that came out in February 3rd of 2025 from Pope Leo, who at the time was Robert Prevost. J.D. Vance is wrong. Jesus doesn't ask us to rank our love for others. And I think what the Catholic Church is doing here, and listen, I'm not a religious person, but I think they know that they have a problem, because Jesus, the character in the Bible, was about compassion, social justice. He spoke out against the accumulation of wealth. And Christian Americans worship capitalism on equal footing that they do their religion. So if you live in the Bible Belt where we live, it's hard to find daylight in a Christian between capitalism and their Lord and personal Savior. You can barely see any because they are on equal footing. And so the church is calling a lot of these charlatans in the United States of America out. And all of these charlatans bask in the MAGA cult, and they know that they have a Jesus problem. But they can't really go on record attacking Jesus. So you hear all this, the Pope is woke.
Right.
And the Pope is, the Pope is anti-MAGA. And it's like, if you don't like the Pope, wait till you hear about this Jesus character. But there's this dissonance with American Christians because so many of their pastors and or priests, more so pastors like in the evangelical movement, are grifters. They're just like Donald Trump. And so I like the optics of this, even though I'm not a big fan of religion, that I do think in order to fix the broken American Christian problem, it has to come from within the Christian movement. If an atheist like me is just on ripping religion all the time, people are going to be dismissive of me. But if somebody within the movement, the Pope, or a reformed evangelical that now maybe is more into just the teachings of Jesus and not about building these big mega churches, that's going to have more credibility. And having a credible messenger to call out the breathtaking American hypocrisy within the religious communities in the United States is going to be instrumental in dismantling MAGA.
Well, interestingly enough, Donald Trump actually endorsed someone for Pope that didn't get it. And then I saw that people, I think Steve Bannon was even saying this Pope is Marxist. I mean, the whole MAGA meltdown over it. Because what he stands for, from what I've read, like I'm not religious, but from what I've read, helping the poor, human rights, equality. And this guy, J.D. Vance is the opposite of all that, including wearing eyeliner.
JD Vance is so diabolical. And I mean, Seth, put back up the tweet where Robert Prevost, the previous one we had up, you can see the eyeliner there.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see where getting super close. Now, Seth, play the video of the Pope again. This time, instead of watching the Pope's body language, I want y'all to really focus on JD Vance's eyes at the Vatican. So here we go. Here he is. I'm just saying, you guys, I think this is as smoky as this is dangerously close to the smoky eye. So, and here's the thing. I don't care if men wear makeup, but this whole movement has marginalized trans people and gender woke ideology, and they have turned working class Americans against their own education departments because of this imaginary problem where people are going to schools, according to Donald Trump on the campaign trail, and getting their wieners whacked off, which is 100% doesn't happen. That is just non-existent, just like the litter boxes are non-existent. But here's where J.D. Vance starts showing how diabolical and how evil and how performative his Catholicism and his Christianity is. Here he is on Air Force Two or whatever he flies on. Here he is talking to the press about Joe Biden's cancer. Play the clip.
First of all, of course, we wish the best for the former president's health.
Oh my God, it's huge.
And, it sounds pretty serious, but hopefully he makes the right recovery. Like, I will say, whether the right time to have this conversation is now or at some point in the future, we really do need to be honest about whether the former president was capable of doing the job.
Okay, stop it right there. J.D. Vance, fuck you.
Yeah.
Joe Biden is not president anymore, and he was confronted due to his age, and he pulled out of the race. But who is president is your boss, Donald Trump, who is clearly not qualified to do this job. And instead of being surrounded by people who would tell him not to run after he tried a coup where they wanted to hang the vice president, nobody in his inner circle said, hey, dude, I think you kind of failed at democracy. Maybe sit this one out. Mitch McConnell didn't do that. Your ass didn't do that. None of these cowardice Republicans did that. But for you to sit here and try to detract and call out Joe Biden, he's not president. He has aggressive cancer. This is a news cycle that should be in the rearview mirror because nobody wants to talk about how crazy, deranged, demented, sociopathic Donald Trump is. This man cannot string together two sentences. He doesn't know who started the Ukraine-Russia war. He doesn't seem to know who pays tariffs. He's in love with Kim Jong-un. He bounces around with a woman who shot her dog for 45 minutes. He rambles on about Hannibal Lecter. This guy is so out of it. He is not even bright. He parades around calling people low IQ in the most classic case of projection I've ever seen in my life because he himself is not a deep thinker. He's not a reader. He's surrounded by a bunch of psychos. You're at the top of the list. Stephen Miller's at the top of the list. Kristi Noem's right there. Pam Bondi. It's the biggest freak show on the global stage. The fact that you would sit there and act like you don't know if Joe Biden could do his job or not when somebody 10 positions down from Joe Biden, 100 positions down from Joe Biden in that administration is a gajillion times more qualified than your left pinky is at running the federal government. You guys have dismantled it. You have a ketamine guy running around who's a total welfare queen. Your whole government is a fucking joke. So if you want to talk about competency and you want to talk about who can run the government, who has leadership, let's have that conversation. And let's put it together, a hyperclip of your boss, the biggest fucking psycho on the planet.
I'll tell you what, I'm not going to listen to a word J.D. Vance says about competency of Joe Biden until he takes Donald Trump's phone from him. Because the shit he says, cap locks on Truth Social, should be disqualifying immediately for dog catching position at the city government, much less president of the United States.
All right. And here's one final clip of J.D. Vance compulsively lying on Fox News.
Thinks that we have to make more of our own stuff.
The economy shrank. First time in 3 years. People are pointing to the tariff policy. There are people looking at their 401ks that are worried. What do you tell them? Is this going to work?
So the first thing is, when you talk about the economy, this is Joe Biden's economy.
Lie.
And
Lie.
we inherited $2 trillion of debt, the
Lie.
highest peacetime deficits in American history, a $1.2 trillion trade deficit, which fundamentally means
Lie.
we're not
Doesn't
making
understand
enough
trade
of our own
policy.
stuff. And the president came in and he said, this is not always going to be easy. It would have been very easy for Donald Trump to do what administrations past have done, which is borrow a lot of money and continue fueling the national debt. He said, no, we need a reset. We need American workers.
Okay, stop right there. Donald Trump, his big, beautiful bill, is proposing more debt.
Right.
Donald Trump dumped more debt on this government than any of his predecessors. This is the big lie. The big lie is not the 2020 election. The big lie, MAGA, is that these people lie to you and tell you that you can't have nice things because of trans people and because of immigrants, which is 100% false. The reason you can't have nice things is because selfish millionaires and billionaires don't want to pay people a living wage so that they can have more private planes and yachts. And think about it like this. They lie to you so much that Fox News, Rupert Murdoch, multi-billionaire, paid $1 billion to a voting machine company for lying. And Trump has hired 30 Fox News employees to help propagate his propaganda on his administration nonstop in a loop.
It's so gross, particularly when you think about this whole, the Wall Street Journal, owned by Rupert Murdoch, right before the election said, whoever is the next president inherits the best economy in the world. The reason it's in the tank is because of his boss. And so instead of sitting there and blaming Joe Biden, go get a makeup remover wipe, lighten up the eyeliner, and sit down and have an honest discussion about tariffs with this man.
He's incapable of that, Pumps, because he is a student of Peter Thiel. And Peter Thiel wants to dismantle democracy. He flirts with this thing called the Dark Enlightenment. And he is on record saying that he does not want democracy. Little J.D. Vance, when he was chubby and the hillbilly elegy, goes off to Silicon Valley and hangs out with Peter Thiel, comes back queer-eyed, and all of a sudden, all of the stuff about Trump being America's Hitler and all this stuff, they said, nope, go suck up to that guy. He's dumber than a box of hot rocks. You pull the levers behind the strings. All we have to do is put shiny objects in front of this guy. And that's what makes J.D. Vance a huge freak. This guy is a total freak show. And I just always think back about this. So he's married to this woman, Usha Vance, whose parents were Indian immigrants, okay? So she's a first-generation American. And when she was at the Republican National Convention, she stood up there and she said that she was a vegetarian in front of like all the Ted Cruzes who are like, Kamala Harris, you're not going to take my cheeseburger. Do you remember that banger of a video that he put out? And the audience was kind of like, these people stand for nothing. They say they're a big tent party, but it's a big tent of misfits full of hate that they all hate each other. And sadly, so many of these people in this tent are mad because both parties have been beholden to corporations. And Trump just messaged in a very elementary school way, this is who you blame. It's an old authoritarian play, as old as, history of civilization. And it worked. And everybody is going to get dicked over except for the 0.00001%. And J.D. Vance is the biggest sellout, fake Catholic, fake American, and I'm going to go on record and say it right here, fake heterosexual. All right, that's all we have. We'll see you all later.